Mr. Sohail Parkar. He is director of IAQA India chapter and has been working in IAQ sector for over 2 decades. He is certified by the US EPA and can train others on how to handle hazardous materials like asbestos, lead, and mercury in indoor environments following the US EPA regulations. Mr. Parker also has experience in restoring buildings after floods, fires, and smoke damage in indoor environments. He's been helping property owners in India and Middle East to find sustainable indoor air quality solutions. Today, Mr. Parker will be sharing his insights on dealing with mold in indoor environments.
Well, we're talking about indoor pollutants. One of the most common, and monsoons are coming up. So I decided let's talk about mold, what it is, where it comes from, and what it does to us, and what are the things we can do to keep it in check and control. I'll try to rush through the slides. The presentation is slightly bigger, so I might skip a few slides to fit into the timeline. Okay. As per Webster, mold is a fungus, mildew, mushroom. In fact, the common mushrooms are basically a family of mold or fungus or fungi. The Americans call it fungi, we call it fungus, but same thing. And it is there everywhere. It's part of our ecosystem. Earth would not survive without it. But in an indoor environment, when the concentration of mold exceeds its limits, it affects us adversely. And there should be a way to control and monitor it, to talk about that. You must have noticed people who come into a building with mold, they have more cases of asthma, allergies, fevers. Quite often you must have seen in hotels which have a bad maintained HVAC system. You get a smell when you're running the air conditioning at 24 degrees. It's an issue with mold, where they're not maintaining the systems and they've allowed mold to grow in the rooms. Is it dangerous? Well, it could be as simple as a running nose, eye irritation, coughing, congestions. Quite often you see certain people are more susceptible than others to mold infection, but generally it's not fatal, but there are people who get infected with severe infections of the lungs, and if it's not controlled, and they'll have serious consequences. It's a very small percentage generally we notice. In fact, I've seen in many offices, there are certain people who wear sweaters when they're sitting in there, sneezing all the time, developing a fever or running nose. The common symptoms which you see. Even though mold affects people differently and may not affect certain individuals at all, it is important that we take it seriously. As I said, it could lead to adverse, and you can't live every day suffering an asthma attack or running nose. Your productivity, your comfort levels will eventually affect your whole health system. I just spoke about how mold is a very important area as far as environment is concerned, as the ecosystem is concerned. You can never eliminate, you should never try to eliminate it totally, but you need to control it and not exceed the limits. If there is no mold, life on earth would not exist. So like all other pollutants, there will be some in it, but it's a question of how we manage and control it, especially in indoor environments. I'll just skip these slides to where does it come from? Well, excessive moisture or water accumulates indoors. Mold growth occurs in most cases, especially when moisture problems remain undiscovered. I'll give you a classical example. You go to a 5-star hotel, you have a door opening, the reception right in front, and if you see the grills right across, when the hot air meets the cold inside, there's condensation taking place, and those grills are all dark and black. That's a sign there's mold growing there, and moisture has caused it, and that moisture has come from condensation. You'll see this in almost quite a few properties. Where did it come from? You need 3 basic elements to give you mold. One is moisture, second is temperature, and finally is food source. Food source, so we'll talk about these 3 elements. You control these 3 elements, you can control mold and mold growth. Moisture, a lot of buildings, you can just walk in and you can see the problems. There's water damage, on walls, leakages. HVAC systems are very common uh, in uh, in some countries, very cold countries. They have humidifiers which cause the problem and leakages from there. Then there are building defects, plumbing lines leaking, uh, exhaust systems not working, in-house landscaping not being managed properly. Uh, Temperature, the other element we spoke about. Quite often you see people blocking cover and covering vents. That will lead to condensation, imbalance, and moisture forming. Faulty mechanical equipment, blocked drip trays, non-performing coils, fans, exhaust systems. All these mechanical systems can cause uh, imbalance in temperatures and lead to condensation. Inadequate or lack of cooling systems. Basically, an air conditioning system is in some form a dehumidifier. Now, if it's not working efficiently and if the fresh air coming from outside is very humid, like we will have in the monsoon storm in the coming months, you will see an acceleration of growth happening. And these organisms grow in hours, not in days. So they can just spike. Now, heavily contaminated cooling system, cooling coils. It's a wet surface, ideal temperature. Don't keep it clean. Don't let the biofilm grow or the other microbial grow on it. Don't clean regularly. You're going to see mold being blown right throughout the building through your HVAC system. What are the food source? All your dry walls, your ceiling tiles, they absorb moisture, they retain moisture. Building materials which exchange moisture. All the dust, dirt, and debris that is accumulated in the building, in the duct systems, in the plenums, in the cavity spaces, on the floors, they all form a food source for these spores to multiply. So you add it with the right moisture, right temperature, and you have a food source, the multiplication will be a lot faster. And of course, the HVAC system just accelerates the process and passes it through if you have not maintained the other elements. Now, this is a typical picture you see in many buildings in India where it is totally ignored, and that is basically mold growing on sites because of the leakage taking place from somewhere. And we have to identify the source. They could be in walls, ceilings, flooring, and HVAC systems. It's not practical that we want to eliminate all mold. Mold spores, it's part of our environment. However, we need to control and need to identify the source from where to control this. And moisture control is the best strategy. Like we have our lungs, the lungs of the building are the HVAC systems. And they carry the air right through it. They go through a process, and if it is not maintained properly, it will take it right through. Most spores that are in the air are pulled in through the return. You've got a bad environment with moisture and a lot of dirt. It's going into the system and spreading right throughout the building. So all these spores are captured by certain filters, media, and by coils. Coil is a wet surface, the drip trays. Quite often, if you see the condition of the HU drains, they're pretty bad, and it spreads right through the building. The HU rooms are some of the most ignored areas, but considering that it's part of the lungs of the building, it should be kept should be one of the most sterile areas. Once spores have entered the mechanical system, they are provided with moisture. But in AC, you have enough moisture, you have condensation taking place there, you have coils there. It's got the food source because getting dust and debris from all over the building coming in through the returns. And if the system is not maintained properly, not cleaned properly, it's even worse. So mechanical it is the breeding ground for microbial contamination when we don't look after it properly. And cooling coils are so ignored at most times that and even the HU rooms, the conditions are pathetic. And as we said earlier, the system is the lungs of our building, and it is spread right through. They then send right downstream and deposit throughout the building. Warning signs. See, we do IAQ audits. We do take an air pump and do air samples. We do count the number of colony forming units. But if you are managing a building right, if you just walk through the building, or when I take a walk, you will see the color of the air vents. You know where the problem is. You see the condensation on the air vents. You know it. You can smell it. I can smell it, and at least 40% of the hotels and rooms I've stayed in, 5-star hotels, I can smell the odor of mold. And the chief engineer has just put the temperature at 19 so that I can't smell it, and locked it. The minute I go below 24, I can smell the mold. And a lot of people who are sensitive keep complaining to no avail. We need to address this. Your office productivity also goes down. Evidence of poor maintenance can be seen physically. I don't need a meter to see that. What are the don't panic. First, it's there, very simple to manage. Those three things we talked about: moisture, dirt, and temperature. We can control the moisture, we can control dirt. Find out the source. Is this a leaking pipe? Is this a badly maintained HVAC system? Is it mixing of cold and air at certain spot where there's condensation happening? Source removal is the first step you need to take. And then communicate these actions, what you have found, where they were, and what you have done about it. So you can keep on eliminating those each areas, document it. So you know if it's still happening, you have to look somewhere else. The problem can be solved quickly if you attend to it. If you let it fester, removing mold, doing a mold remediation, it's a very painful, long process. Catch it at the beginning, it will not spread. But once spread, it takes a lot of time to handle. The safety and health of your employees is so important. Just imagine you have a high mold content and people are uncomfortable in the office. They've got running noses, they've got watering eyes, some are sneezing. And if this thing keeps continuing, what is your productivity going to be? Your problem can become a disaster. Avoid that. So your maintenance, awareness of your entire maintenance staff to look out for those telltale signs to prevent it from happening. As I said, locate the source. There's a big fallacy where people are saying that the HVAC system has contaminated the building. No, the building has contaminated the HVAC system. The building is just the lungs, they're just taking in the air from the building. And it is telltale signs in the building which we have to monitor. We have to maintain the system, but the source may not be in the HVAC system. So it's the building that contaminates the HVAC system. Regardless of the source, you need to properly clean and decontaminate. However, if the building is the source, you have to find it, address it, fix it, so that it does not recontaminate again. Because you can keep cleaning. If you've not identified the source, it will come again and again. And most of these things are pretty simple, but we ignore it. HVAC remediation should be performed by a professional who understands. So when you find with the that there's a mold issue in your building and it has infected large areas and you want over a long period of time, then you will need to get a professional to fix it. Because he'll have to create a containment, not cleaning it properly might promote it spreading faster and across if you get an unexperienced guy to handle it. And there are standards, there are requirements for safety which can be addressed. Benefits, increased employee morale, productivity as I spoke about. Generally, air conditioning is for comfort, and we don't have many claims here in this country, but it will be an issue in the future. Did I finish it in my timeline?